Although Tristan had been mercilessly mocked by Finn, he remained rather expressionless. "You don't have to worry about these matters. I will send someone to set things straight. In any case, Gab will withdraw from the training class because of his injured leg. All you have to worry about is attending the class and doing well in your learning." Tristan suddenly paused and raised his head to look at Finn. The young actor had been staring at him the whole time while he was speaking. It was hard to ignore such an intense stare even if he wanted to. "All right, I know what you want to ask. It's exactly as you have suspected. Gab is the one responsible for when you had been beaten on set last time, for spreading the rumors about you pushing him into the ocean, and for the incident this time as well." Tristan was somewhat unnerved by Finn's stare and decided to explain everything straightforwardly. "It's true that he loathes you. As for the reason, I have no idea. We will make some strong statements about these false claims against you and carry out the necessary actions. However, you must understand, Gab will not be exposed as the perpetrator just because of this affair." "I will leave first then. President Liu, you can continue working." Finn stood up to leave. "Finn," Tristan suddenly called out his name. Finn paused, turned around, and smiled. "President Liu, do you have any other business with me?" "In a few days when you have free time, go to America and have a talk with Director Lee. You have a great chance of winning one of the lead roles for his new movie. You can ask Sharon for the more specific details." "That sounds like great news." Finn didn't seem much surprised or excited. He merely smiled cheerfully and replied, "Then I will start preparing for the trip in the next few days." Tristan stood up and walked over to Finn's side. "The company has spent a great deal of effort recommending you for the movie. Finn, don't disappoint me." "Your words put a lot of pressure on me." Finn furrowed his brows and smiled faintly. It was Finn's first time having tea in a police station. Finn had been under the impression that the police would regard him as a prime suspect after all the noise and speculation the media was making over the case. Unexpectedly, when he walked into the station, someone poured him a cup of tea and everyone treated him rather well. Finn sat there drinking his tea while waiting for someone to call him. He waited, but to his surprise the police let him walk out of the station not 5 minutes later. "Mr. Officer, are we really finished here?" Finn hadn't spoken a single word since he stepped foot inside the station. "Yes, we have nothing else planned for you. Thank you for your cooperation. Take care." The officer politely showed him the way out. The next day, the police made a public announcement declaring that they had apprehended the criminal who'd injected Gab's horse with the stimulant. It wasn't Finn, nor was it any of the other trainees. Reportedly, the criminal was a diehard fan of Gab's who used to adore him, but wanted him dead for various incomprehensible reasons, such as thinking that Gab would be theirs after death. Tristan Entertainment filed a lawsuit against all those who'd said Finn was the one pulling the strings online. In any case, Tristan had a surplus of money and numerous talented people working under him. He could and would sue anyone who dared to slander Finn's name. He didn't let any members of the Water Army, people paid by newspapers and magazines to post malicious comments, escape. The lawsuits weren't publicized, but rumors of Tristan's ruthless actions had spread within the entertainment industry itself. From this point on, nobody believed that Finn was simply a disposable small-time star employed under the Tristan Group. But as they were dealing with Tristan, no one dared to add anything else to the rumors that would make the president lose face. Just like that, the raucous online gossip of Finn being jealous of Gab had its fire extinguished. The Tristan Group's PR department also expertly diverted the public's attention from the scandal by releasing news of the diehard fan trying to kill Gab immediately after the incident. As a result, Finn gradually faded from the filthy world of scandals. Most rumors had calmed down by now, but this situation was like hammering a nail onto a wooden slab. Even if the nail was pulled off, the hole would remain. No matter how they tried to cover it up or fill it in, they would never be able to remove the scar. Some of the public would definitely remember this incident and keep it in mind. "Listen, we got along quite well before and had an enjoyable time together, right?" With his elbows on the table, Charles tilted his head toward Finn and offered an invitation. "How about you move back and live with me again?" Finn lifted his teacup and took a sip of the fragrant, green tea. He narrowed his eyes and smiled at Charles. Soft candlelight shone through intricately made paper lanterns and illuminated the area. Amidst the green grass and fragrant flowers sat two men facing each other, an arrangement of refined dishes placed between them. Finn barely spoke, his head was lowered and he was slowly savoring the taste of the food. The few times he did lift his head, instead of looking at the handsome Charles sitting across from him, he turned in the direction of the man-made lake. A few white swans were gathered at the shore, angling their necks to peck at the tender leaves on the trees scattered about. When you're eating with me, don't go looking at stupid birds. Or are you implying that I'm not as attractive as those stupid birds in your eyes? Charles suddenly exclaimed, revealing his dissatisfaction. Finn slowly withdrew his eyes from the lake. Instead of looking at Charles, he lowered his head again to take a sip of soup with his silver spoon. Charles, if you want to be jealous of a few stupid birds, then I don't mind. Jealous? You must be joking. It's only polite to maintain eye contact with the person you're having dinner with. Charles discovered that he suddenly had an appetite for swan meat. Charles, you're an arrogant pervert. I have the wealth to be arrogant, and being a pervert is just my nature. Just admit it, my dear Tang. In truth, you actually like my type of pervert. You seem relaxed and at ease on the surface, but you can be overly serious at times. During those moments, you don't seem like you're 20, but a senior citizen of 40 years. Charles lowered his voice and said quietly beside Finn's ear, only a pervert like me would be excited by something like that. Going back to something I've already mentioned, I think we make an extraordinary match. Finn chuckled and tilted his head to glance at Charles. He narrowed his eyes and spoke as if merely joking, how do you know I'm not a 40-year-old senior citizen? Look, the past Finn is completely different from the current me. That's because he'd moved on when he fell into the ocean. Then what are you supposed to be right now? A deep-sea monster? Charles burst into laughter. Finn nodded and replied, yup, that's right. I'm a deep-sea monster that has taken over this man's body to live in the human world. That's why it's best if you don't get any closer to me, or I'll suck all the vitality out of you. Moreover, I'm not actually 40, but 400 years old. I was originally an old and ugly sea monster. Icky green moss covered my skin and I dripped slime everywhere. While speaking, Finn morphed his expression into a sinister one. As an unparalleled actor, his acting skills were truly extraordinary. As his expression and the mood about him became increasingly wicked, it seemed like he really had been taken over by a monster. At that moment, he appeared very different from his normal indifferent self. Charles was somewhat stunned at the sight. Just a moment before, Finn had been relaxed and self-assured. However, in a split second, he had turned into an imposing, sinister man. But why did Charles find Finn utterly handsome instead of being afraid or finding the act ridiculous? Today, I saw another side of you. Charles furrowed his brows, looking a bit dejected. The man opposite of him had already returned to his normal state, holding a wine glass in his hand and appearing relaxed and comfortable. I feel utterly terrible right now, Charles exclaimed and slapped himself on the leg. Do you know? I've lived with you for a month, but besides knowing that you like watching movies while taking a bath, I didn't even know that you had a side like this. I'm totally dismayed by this. Finn was going to be absent on the third week of True Star training class. The public reason was that he had business he must take care of, but Tristan Entertainment did not clarify exactly what the business entailed. Sitting in the first-class cabin of the airplane, the previously good-humored and energetic Finn pulled on his sleep mask and dozed off. It was an old habit of his that didn't change even after his rebirth. Tristan was sitting beside Finn. He turned his head sideways and glanced at the already asleep Finn. How can he sleep so much? He pulled out his phone and took a picture of Finn. Despite not being his homeland, America was the place where Finn had grown up, lived, struggled, and rose to fame. After getting off the airplane, Finn breathed in deeply. Besides feeling a sense of familiarity for the land, Finn could also feel the exhaustion that came along with jet lag deeply in his bones. Tristan walked over and accepted the suitcase from Finn's hand. The president appeared rather refreshed and energetic and didn't seem to be suffering from jet lag at all. Finn was quite jealous of that. We've arranged to meet with Director Liam the day after tomorrow. You can use today and tomorrow to adjust your sleeping schedule. Relax and don't be nervous. President Liu, you should learn to believe in your employees. I've always believed in you. Tristan leaned on the back of his seat with a glass of iced whiskey in his hand. He tilted his head back and downed half the glass in one swig. The corner of Finn's eye twitched as he watched the scene. You'll develop stomach problems if you drink like that. The health-oriented Finn kindly reminded the other. I already have stomach problems, Tristan replied simply, but he placed the glass aside and left the remaining half of the whiskey untouched. If you don't know how to control yourself, then you should find someone who can. Tristan tilted his head toward Finn, the corner of his mouth lifting up. Can you control me? I would like to live for a few more years. You should leave an arduous job like that to your future wife. Finn leaned his head back and closed his eyes to sleep. Tristan smiled but said nothing in response. After an hour or so, the car came to a stop. When he saw the 5-star luxurious hotel whose tall and rigid silhouette rose up into the skies before him, he couldn't resist giving an impressed whistle. "President Liu, is the company paying for our trip this time? If you plan on deducting the cost from my salary, then I think we should go stay at a cheaper hotel instead. Actually, to cut down on our spending, I only booked one presidential suite." Finn expressed that he didn't care. In any case, there were more than one bedroom and bathroom in the presidential suite. When they opened the door to the presidential suite, both Finn and Tristan froze and stared in shock. On the floor was a red heart made of flower petals. In addition, silver candlesticks holding brightly burning candles littered the tables, cabinets, and every other available surface. A faint smell of sweet perfume permeated the room. There was even a bottle of chilled champagne waiting inside. "President Liu, are you sure you booked the presidential suite and not the honeymoon suite?" Finn walked inside and stepped over the heart made of petals. He finally understood why the receptionist had given them a second glance and gently said, "I wish for your happiness," while they were getting their keys at the front desk. "It's fine as long as it's livable." Although he didn't know which step had gone wrong in the checking-in process, Tristan quickly recovered his usual calm after the initial surprise. "All right." Finn put down his luggage and immediately headed for the bathroom. When he reached the bathroom, he found that the bathtub had already been filled with water that was kept at a constant warm temperature. Semi-transparent and fragrant candles were placed alongside the square, marble bathtub while fresh rose petals floated in the bathwater. Finn didn't have the habit of taking rose petal baths, however, since the hotel had already prepared it, wouldn't it be wasteful if he didn't at least enjoy it? God knows how much they had spent buying those fresh roses. Moreover, Tristan was the one who had paid for the suite. Finn couldn't waste money like this. The faint fragrance of the water was lovely, but what Finn was the happiest about was the TV inside the bathroom. He could recline back and watch TV and change channels whenever he wanted. Finn didn't leave the hotel for 2 days straight. If he wasn't reading a book inside his room, he would be actively working out in the gym. Finn's current body was in rather good shape and he hoped he could keep it that way. Moreover, for a man who could never run in the past in fear of a heart attack, being able to exercise and work up a sweat was simply a great feeling. Tristan would sometimes pull Finn along for a game of tennis. At first, Finn suffered utter defeat at the hands of a seasoned player like Tristan. But Finn was a fast learner, even though he still wasn't able to beat Tristan in a game, at least his score wasn't 0 anymore. Just like this, he passed 2 leisurely days. Finn was going to meet with director Liam the next day. The young actor took a deep breath and pulled lightly at his collar. Finn did his best to remain calm. He might look completely unperturbed on the outside, but he couldn't suppress the faint excitement in his heart. After adjusting his state of mind, Finn strode into the elevator and pushed the button for the right floor. Slowly, the elevator doors closed upon itself. Albert retracted his eyes from the elevator, a small smile gracing his lips. "This is what we call destiny. God had ordained us to meet here." In another room inside the hotel, Finn met with director Liam once again. "You came early. We're still waiting for another person, so why don't you sit with us for a while?" Director Liam smiled and asked. "Oh, speak of the devil, here he is." Director Liam smiled and looked in the direction of the door. "Gino, we were all waiting for you." "Am I late?" Gino spread out his hands in a shrug. The internationally well-known actor had a pair of oversized sunglasses perched on his nose and a wild mess for hair on top. Gino leaned against the door frame and smiled at the occupants of the room. "I have some information here for you to look through, including the script. After the two of you sign the confidential contract, you can take these home to look over. You can use the 3 months before we officially start filming to read through the script and figure out your role." Director Liam smiled and added, "However, what's most important isn't the script. If possible, I would like the two of you to get to know each other better so that you wouldn't be awkward and tense when we get to those scenes." "We will." Gino smiled at Finn and patted him on the shoulder in a familiar gesture. The silence inside the elevator created a suffocating atmosphere. Leaning on the wall with his arms crossed, Gino turned to look at Finn, feelings of awe rising inside him. Finn's cool and calm exterior, but slightly overconfident core reminded Gino of someone he once knew. "How can you be so distant with me after leaving the meeting?" Gino laughingly appraised Finn. The latter stood with his hands in his pockets and a nonchalant expression on his face. It seemed like he would keep up the cool exterior even if an earthquake were to happen. "I don't remember us being so familiar with each other. Why did you agree so quickly to act in this film?" Without turning his head, Finn continued looking at the elevator doors that reflected the famous celebrity behind him. Gino raised an eyebrow. To be honest, you're not the first Asian actor I've come across, so I'm also curious as to why you're so obviously averse to seeing me. What is it that made you this way? We're here. The elevator doors opened right at that moment, and Finn strode out. Gino also walked outside. Thinking back on Finn's words and actions, he felt that he saw more and more traces of Fiennes from this man. Why don't we go get coffee together? Gino looked at his watch. We can chat about the movie. I don't have anything else for the afternoon. Whenever it came to work, Finn never brought in his personal feelings. He replied, sure. A few customers sat in the coffee shop located on a terrace midway up the hotel while a cool afternoon breeze brushed over them. The fragrant aroma of coffee lingered in the air and a display of intricate desserts was arranged in front of them. Everything was relaxing and comfortable. Gino lightly swirled his coffee, his eyes on the man reading the script across from him. There was an oddly familiar feeling about the other actor. Just what was it about him? The feeling had been there since they'd first met. It was also the reason he'd asked director Liam to give Finn a chance. Even if you keep staring at me, I won't turn into a flower. Turning the page, Finn took a sip of his coffee without looking up. He took his coffee without sugar or milk. It was an old habit of his that never changed. Gino rested his chin on his hand, his sunglasses covering his eyes. With a slight smile, he said, "You're already a flower." "If I'm a flower, then what are you?" Finn snickered. It was the first time someone had compared him to a flower. "Me? As for me, I'm the gardener who takes care of the flowers, but I could also be a flower thief." Gino laughed as he spoke. "What do you think?" "I find you boring. If you really were a gardener, then you wouldn't be able to grow any flowers at all." Raising an eyebrow, Finn spoke in an uninterested, bored tone. Gino's eyes suddenly widened. "Tang, do you know? Ever since the first time I saw you, I've had a very weird feeling, like I've met you before." "Do you know Fiennes Tang?" Gino asked. Finn's heart skipped a beat, but he continued looking down at the script. "Yes, of course, he's famous." "Not only that," Gino continued, "Tang, you're really similar to him. Even your names are the same. Look, you both like coffee without sugar. This is a preference that many people could have. Not just this. You probably can't imagine it, but what you just said is exactly the same as what Fiennes had told me before. He always told me that I'm a boring and silly person, and that everything I said was meaningless." With a hint of sadness in his eyes, Gino sighed. Fiennes was a really good man, but even God was jealous of him, and took him away early as a punishment. Finn raised his head and put the script in his bag. They were supposed to be discussing the movie, but not even one sentence of their conversation so far had anything to do with it. Since the topic was on Fiennes Tang now, Finn's interest piqued. He wanted to know what kind of person he was from Gino's point of view. After all, Gino had just said that he was a good man. "It sounds like you were really close with him," Finn said. "What kind of person was he?" "Fiennes?" Gino shook his head and smiled. As though reminiscing the past, he looked at the cup of black coffee in his hands. "He looked mature, calm, and charismatic on the outside, but he's actually proud and self-assured. Sometimes you can't help but tease him. For some reason, I especially liked seeing him bristle all over. I recall that he had heart disease." "Treating a sick person like that, Gino, you bastard."